Okay, here we go. All right, quick introduction. Good morning, Johnny. Or, well, it's morning where I'm at. Maybe it's morning where you're at. If not, good day anyway. Thanks for joining me. Let me know how the sound is. If anybody, Johnny, if you're here or if anybody else is here, let me know how the sound is. I got a new mic. I'll talk about it a little bit more later, but just let me know the level if you can. And let's see, we're going to do the quick introduction. So, yeah, let's get started. Hello, everybody. My name is foamyguy. Go by foamyguy online. Well, my name is Tim. I go by foamyguy online on GitHub and Discord and other places. So in this stream, we're going to be working on CircuitPython. If you don't know anything about CircuitPython, if you haven't watched any of these streams before, CircuitPython is a version of Python that runs on tiny computers called microcontrollers. So this one that I have pulled up on the screen here is a CircuitPython microcontroller. This is a PyPortal device. It's got built-in screen, and it's also got some stuff on the back here. Colorful NeoPixel. There's, I think, an accelerometer in there. There's an SD card slot. There's a speaker, and there's some other stuff there. So it's a kind of like a little mobile phone almost. It doesn't make calls, and it doesn't. I don't think it has a microphone. So it's not exactly phone-like, but it's kind of like a little touchscreen computer, and you can write programs for it with Python code. So all of these, this device here is made by a company called Adafruit. Adafruit is the primary financial backer for the CircuitPython project. They pay folks to work on the CircuitPython project full-time. And so if you like the project, if you want to support it, one way that you can do that is by purchasing hardware from Adafruit. So adafruit.com, this is their website here. There's all kinds of new stuff that has been coming out lately. The thing I got my eye on is the, let's see, I think it's listed here somewhere, the Featherwing with the keys. This thing right here. Neo Key Featherwing. They're out of stock right now though, so it's like I can't get them just yet. But I'm excited to pick up some of these and use it to make a cool little macro pad with maybe a tripler or a quadrupler feather plug in there. But yeah, they make all kinds of electronics, microcontrollers, like I mentioned. This one here is an Adafruit device. And then they also make, sensors and breakouts and things that you can plug in and use with your microcontrollers. So again, if you want to support CircuitPython, purchase hardware from Adafruit.com. To wrap it up, let's see. Adafruit.com. This is not a paid stream. So Scott, if you're in the community, Scott streams on Fridays. Scott's one of the full-time developers that Adafruit pays. He gets paid to stream and to work on CircuitPython. This is a different situation. I'm not paid by Adafruit to stream. I'm not paid by them to promote their stuff here at the beginning. This is just I like the project and I want it to succeed, and I want obviously Adafruit to succeed so that they can keep funding it. They can keep supporting it. So. They're not paying me to stream. They do pay me to make guides and other software sometimes, so I do work for them, but not in this capacity here. This is just something I do for fun. Okay. Anything else for the intro? I don't think so. Let's talk a little bit about what I am going to work on today. Actually, let me get this stuff closed up here. So today, I'm going to work on moving... Let's see, I should have had some of this stuff pulled up. I in a stream a couple of weeks back, maybe a month or two ago, I had worked on kind of transitioning this old library that I created. I had called it display.io layout, I think, or just layouts, or CircuitPython layouts, or something like that. We eventually ended up having a real library called display.io layout, so the name got kind of confusing, and one of the streams, one of the things I worked on was transitioning this over to being called inflator, so display.io inflator, the idea being that it consumes JSON code and it allows you to create display.io objects that you can then put on the screen, so like labels and images and any of the other widgets that existed at the time. There's a bunch of new widgets that exist now. It's not hooked up to use all of those yet. But but that's the gist of it. And so the specific thing I'm going to be working on today is inside of this older library that I made, there was one thing that was kind of like a layout widget in and of itself. It was actually a new type of widget. It was kind of coupled together with all of the JSON inflating stuff, so like all of it was kind of put in together. But it was more like a widget. And so this is a linear layout, and from the name you can probably guess what it does. It just puts things in a line. You can have either a vertical line or a horizontal line, and it will just line them up for you, one next to the other or one above the other. So specifically what I want to work on today is removing the parts of this widget that are dealing with the JSON specifically, because the way that I created this was it was a class. It kind of accepts the JSON as one of the parameters here, and then it goes and inflates itself and builds this view, and then allows you to add it to the screen. I want to kind of decouple it a little bit, so it should end up as a layout object that you can use by yourself, by itself. It doesn't need to have the JSON anymore. And it should follow roughly the same API that the grid layout does. So we have a grid layout inside display.io layout. Yeah, I got one of the bouncy balls. I've been watching different folks on Twitch lately, and I noticed one of them that I've been watching is bouncing around a little bit, and it got me wanting to get my ball back out and go. So yeah, I got that going this week. Oh, sorry. Hopefully it's not too distracting. Sorry. I do tend to bounce a little bit on it. So, anyway though, been looking and buying one. Yeah, they're nice. I like it. I kind of want one that's just a touch smaller than what I have. I can only sort of get my feet down to the ground. So it's actually, though, I will say I've been using it for a few days now, and it's kind of lost a little bit of its air, and it's a little bit better than when I started. So it's pretty good. Please report back in a couple of weeks if it works. Yeah, I can let you know. I can let you know how I like it. So far, I like it quite a bit. I've used them before. This is not the first time I've used them. I used them at work for a little while, and I've used them at home on and off. So just switching onto it. I'm sure I'll go back to the chair a little bit. I do the chair later at night sometimes if my legs are tired too, even when I'm using the ball. But yeah, I can let you know how it's going in a couple weeks. Let's see, what was I saying? So yeah, grid layout. This is one of the layouts that exists in the display.io layout library, and it's pretty similar to what the linear layout does. In fact, you could kind of probably use the grid layout to achieve a similar thing. You just make your grid like x by 1 or 1 by x, right? You get to declare the grid size right here. So if you make it just one column or one row, then it will kind of work fairly similarly to the linear layout. It does have cell padding and grid size and some other stuff that we don't need for the linear layout though. So I think it'd be good to add that as an option inside of this display.io layout library. So that's the first thing I'm going to work on. If there's time after that, the next thing I will do is start working with Cookie Cutter to create some new libraries for some of the widgets. Some of the widgets that are in here, well, all the widgets that are in here, we're going to separate out and put in their own libraries, and then they can go in the community bundle perhaps, and under the CircuitPython, what is it called, group maybe, or organization or something on GitHub. So Scott's got us, he wanted us to break this up a bit, right? Because this is display.io layout, but a lot of what we put into it was widgets. The first thing was a layout, and kind of the idea was always to add more of those layouts, and we're going to do that today with linear layout. But we added a bunch of widgets as well. And so because the name is layout, it doesn't necessarily follow that there would be a bunch of widgets inside there. So we're going to break it up a little bit, make one repo for each of these. For the most part, a couple of them will go together, like if they if they work together, like icon widget and icon animated, right? Those two go together because icon animated, extends icon widget. So those will go in a library together, but the rest of these will get broken out into individual ones. So be working with Cookie Cutter to create those libraries, and then I'll make them, just as I'll push them up under my GitHub, and then we can create blank ones under the CircuitPython org, and then PR to pull those into there. So kind of a lot going on there, but again, that's only if we get some time after working on the linear layout. That's gonna be the first thing I work with. So let's dive into that. So let me get back to grid layout, because we want to base linear layout off of this quite a bit. So we want to do a similar API like what do you call here? Add content. Yeah, add content. So this is how you add items into your grid. And we'll reuse this. We'll make an add content function for linear layout. It doesn't have one right now, but we'll make one, and you'll pass the content. You won't have a grid size, you won't have a grid position. You won't have a grid size, so you'll just pass the content, and it will add it at the end of the current list. If we wanted to be super fancy, maybe we could let you pass an index. I don't know. I think to start with, though, it'll just be the view by itself, or the content by itself, and it will just stick it at the end. So let's take a look at what we have already in linear layout. Actually, let me start by making a branch. What am I on? Clear. I'm on Adafruit main. Let's get out of docs. Whoops. Up. Let's make a branch. Well, let's pull. Let's fetch, actually. Okay, we're up to date there. We're up to date there. So git checkout. Hopefully the typing is not as bad anymore. I did get a new microphone finally. It's up on a arm, so it's still connected to the desk, but it's much farther away from the keyboard, and it's not right up next to it. So hopefully it's not as bad when I type anymore. Checkout -b. What is this? The name of the branch. So this is linear layout. Linear layout. Adafruit main. Whoops. No track. Yeah. So there we go. Now we're on linear layout branch. Whoops. It says right there. Yeah. So we can. I'm going to make a new file or just copy in the file we have. Let's look at what we have. It's got copyright and everything. Yeah, let's just copy this in to start with. There's going to be a bunch of stuff we need to remove that's all related to JSON, but we might as well just start from this. So let's grab linear layout from here. We might need layout exceptions, I'm not sure. Some of those probably related to the JSON. Yeah, it looks like, honestly, a lot of those are related to the JSON. We'll see if we end up needing some of them. Linear layout, let's grab that and put it in layout here. Typing is much better. Awesome. Thank you for the feedback. I think, I don't remember if you were the one that pointed that out, but yeah, I'm glad it's a lot better. Okay. I also played with OBS a little bit. I'm slowly but surely I'm learning how to hook up OBS. So I got myself in a circle now because it reveals a little bit more of the screen. It's harder to hide stuff behind it. So trying to evolve slowly but surely. All right. So we're gonna change this up, because we're no longer going to be worried about consuming JSON. I kind of like that inflator model of using JSON to design your layouts. So, I'm still working on that inflator library, and I intend to have that, published for myself, and I'll probably use it on complex layouts. But I think the way that it will work in the future is, instead of having a class for each type of thing you want to inflate, it will have one class for the inflator, and then you make an instance of that, and then you call inflate, you tell it what you want it to inflate. So instead of using constructors to pass in that JSON, it will have a method for that, or a function. Let's see here. Next step is to make that JP. Yeah, I do need some music, and some transitions would be cool. Or, like lots of people on Twitch, they have extra little screens, like a waiting screen, especially, in case if the cats are fighting or whatever, and you gotta step away a minute, they'll have a little countdown, like 2 minutes or 5 minutes or something. It'd be good to have one of those. It'd be good to have easy ways to switch. I do have a Stream Deck, but I don't have OBS hotkeys in it. I might do that. I like using my Stream Deck for code stuff, though. I might get a Stream Deck that runs on the computer. Like I can just have a window open for it or something like that. But yeah, I do have the Stream Deck. I just don't use it for OBS. Oh, I noticed you didn't say music. It's a little small. Let me make my preview a little bigger here, actually, so I can see the chat better. There we go. It'd be nice to have some music too, though. Maybe a little animation on the waiting screen. Anyway, linear layout. So yeah, let's do this, actually. I like to do it this way when I'm working on two things that are similar. So let's go split. So I got grid layout on the right over here, and I'm just going to kind of go through and make some stuff match. So we are going to want to extend group, display.io group. We don't want to take the JSON anymore. We don't want to take the screen, I don't think. We don't take the screen here, right? No. XY, width, height, grid size, cell padding, max size. Yeah, we don't need any of that. I wonder, instead of group, if we should extend widget. Let's see. Because widget would give us anchored positioning. Widget extends group. Yeah, I think we should do that instead. Maybe grid layout should be that way too, so that you can place it with anchored positioning. So let's go widget. Is it just, do we need widget.widget, or let's look at the example of one of the ones that extends it, actually. That's extending both, and it is just widget. Okay, capital W widget. Linear, oops, here we go. Widget, it's going to want to import it, so let's do that. Import, yep. Okay, so we don't need the display. We should probably take mostly the same things as grid layout. Except I don't know about width and height. I think width and height, I don't think we want to take those. Well, for one thing, those, do they work inside widget? Takes X and Y and passes it to super, which is group. It does set a width and a height. And it keeps the bounding box. Well, it has to have a width and a height in order to use anchored positioning. Yeah. Duh. Okay, yeah, we definitely want to take those. Okay. So we can put those over here. XY, we do still want orientation. Do we need anything else? We don't need grid size. We don't need cell padding, because we're not having cells really. Max size. We can take max size. Only for a little bit longer, though, do we have to worry about max size. That actually got removed in the core inside group. That's an attribute of group, and we don't need it anymore because group is going to be more like a list. You can just add stuff to it until you run out of memory. It doesn't really have a max size. JSON, we don't need to load any JSON. We do want to set the portrait orientation. We don't need this dictionary thing. This was used for kind of like storing the constructors for the different types of what I'll call widgets. They did not actually extend widgets, so maybe they're not technically widgets, but all the things you can make with my inflator library, they get created when they get inflated. This was used for holding those constructors that inflate them. Display, we don't need. Subviews might be nice to have. Let's keep that. Subview ID to index. That's a mapping. We don't need that because we're not going to have IDs. Hey Dexter, how's it going? Thanks for joining. Okay. This is checking the view type inside the JSON. We don't care about that. This is also checking the view type. What is this? If view type... Oh, if the view type does not exist in the JSON at all, raise an error. If the view type does exist, but it's the wrong type, raise an error. We don't need any of that because we're not reading the JSON. Subviews, we don't need to find it in the JSON. We're going to keep a list called subviews. We're going to add our, what I'll refer to as views to it, but like content widgets, like a label or an image or a shape or a progress bar, anything that, anything you can add to a group in display.io, basically. Okay, view. I don't think we need that. We definitely don't want to build it from JSON like this. Whoops. Okay, so we can set some of this stuff. We do just set X and Y and width and height, which, yeah, come from here. Orientation still we keep, yep. Don't need those. Cell content list. Oh, I think cell content list. I think that's actually what the concept of subviews ended up being called, to try to get away from using the term views. Views really came from my Android background. In Android, they call like a single thing that can go on a screen a view, and then like like everything you see on the screen extends view. So like button, there's a button, it extends view. There's a, you know, list view, it extends view. There's layouts that extend view. So I tend to refer to things that way just because of my background. I think though we don't want to use that, and we want to stick to the term content whenever we can. So the contents of this layout, so let's call this content items, maybe, or content list. Content list. We don't have cells in the same way that the grid layout does, so I don't want to use cell. I think content list is good though. Subview by index, we're not going to have... You could maybe just access it by index because it's a list. Subview ID we're not going to have because we don't have IDs. Build group from layout JSON. So yeah, we don't need hardly any of this stuff because we're no longer inflating. So let's see, the bottom part down here I think is doing the actual placements. So it'll be nice to keep that code for reference. It'll end up getting put inside of maybe layout cells, some of it, and maybe add content, some of it. But definitely all this top part here, we don't need any of that. So this is all creating views, so imports needed dictionary, we're not doing any importing. That's also for importing, debug. I think this whole for loop probably goes away. Yeah. Okay. I'm going to leave that function build group from layout JSON for now because I'm going to copy some of the code out of it, but eventually that function is going to get deleted. We want to have a layout function. I'm going to call it just layout because we're not laying out cells. Layout self. Just going to put pass for now. Come back to that. I'm going to also make an add content. Def add content. Cell content. Oh, we don't want cell though. Let's just call it content. Content item. Content. We'll just call it content. Whoops. Oops. Okay. So when you add content, so this one, grid layout here, is creating a dictionary object which has content, grid position, and cell size. I think we only need content because we're not going to have grid position and we're not going to have cell size. So we don't really need a dictionary, I don't think. We can just use cell content by itself. So when add content gets called, we want to add the new content item into our list. So that is self.contentList.push. No, not push, that's JavaScript. Append. Been working in JavaScript a little bit lately. Speaking of which, we don't need semicolon. Append the content, and then call layout. Self.layout so that it will redraw. Yeah, and I think that's it. We can make a doc string though, that'd probably be good. Child to the list, add child to the layout. Just call it linear layout, let's be all the way specific, linear layout. Cell content is just content. Grid position doesn't exist, cell size doesn't exist. It does return none. Doesn't need pass anymore. Just make sure this makes sense. The content to add to the linear layout. E.g. label button, etc. Group subclass that have height and width properties can be used. Subclasses, I think that's supposed to be subclasses. I feel like we should mention widget here. If you subclass widget, then you have everything you need to be used. Hey. play with the wires. Okay. Yeah, I don't know the right way to word it though, so I'm gonna leave it for now. Add content, that part looks good. So layout, then some of this is gonna be the code that we will take from down in here. Build group from layout. So layout group. Layout group. We don't need that because we're extending group. Yeah, we're extending group. Well, we're extending widget, and then widget is extending group. So we don't need to have like a layout group inside of our class. We do need to call init up here though, super init into widget, which will then call super init into group. Super init, what is this? So we pass through x, y, scale is 1. Are these named parameters? They are. Okay, I should do it that way. Scale. We don't want to set either of those for now, I don't think. Scale defaults to 1, so we don't need to pass it. So let's pass xy with height and then quarks to make sure we get max size. Super. Let's do them this way though. X, Y, width, height, and we don't actually, yeah, we don't actually need to do quarks. We can just do max size because group doesn't take anything else. We don't want none though, we want max size. Whoops. Okay, so now we're initialized. So we can just get rid of this because we won't be using layout group, instead we'll be using self. Self.previous previous view end, we're gonna rename that, but we're gonna keep it previous content end. So this is the Y position in pixels of the bottom of the previous view. If we are in the portrait orientation where stuff goes vertically, if we're in the horizontal orientation where stuff goes side to side, then this would be the X coordinate pixel that's at the far end of the previous item, the item that we added before. So that's always like, it's kind of like the next spot where we're going to put something. Okay, so this is looping over all the views that are inside of the JSON subview. So we're going to loop. I am going to switch these around so that it's easier to copy paste from there. We're not going to loop from the layout JSON though. Now we want to loop from the content list. So for index view in content list, we'll call this content. Okay, we don't care about view type. That's a JSON thing. We don't care about ID. What is this doing? If it's a if it's not a label, okay, this is the constructor thing. View type. Yeah. Passes the display. And the view, which would have been a view object, like a JSON object from the JSON. Okay, so this is creating views. We're not doing that anymore. Instead, whenever it gets passed to us, it will have already been created. So, you could still use an inflator to create it before you pass it in, but we're no longer doing any creating inside of here. So we're not calling constructors. We don't care about ID. We don't care about view types. We've already added everything to our list, because we're not creating these things right here. Like this old function, it was creating it all. We're no longer creating it, so we don't need to add it to the list because we already added it back here in add content. Okay, so now it looks like we're getting into some actual positioning stuff, which we will need. So if it is portrait, then set the current view, which would be content for us. Set the Y to the previous content end. And then I had the idea of margin between them. It was specified in the JSON. I think I'm going to leave it out for now. Maybe we'll go back and add a way to do it. So this would be like making extra space between two items. So by default, they'll line up like exactly one below the next. There won't be any extra room between them. But we can go back and add a way to make extra room. Maybe you can. Maybe we do have like a top level like padding for every item. I don't think we want to call it cell padding, which I think is what it was here. Cell padding, but maybe we could have a similar idea. Or the other way we could do it maybe is when you call add content, maybe there is another optional parameter that is the margin. Hey Juan Carlos, how's it going? Thanks for joining. I think those are both decent options. But let's just try to get the core functionality working first, and then we will come back and do the margin stuff. So we will have basically just this. Set the current view. So let's grab our if statement. Let's grab this much. Okay, if the layout is portrait, then set the Y. Set the Y of the current thing we're looking at, so content. So we don't have .view or view layout. We have content. Set the Y of the content to the previous end. To do, add padding here. What is this one? Oh, and then set the new previous content end, because we added a new item, so our previous content end needs to go to the end of what is now our newest item. So now it would be, it's equal to, well, it's really equal to the same thing it used to be equal to, right? Because we put its value into content Y, so we could actually just say the old value. I think it makes sense this way though. Content Y plus Y height. One thing is though, not Y height, but content height. One thing is though, there's different ways to get the height from different types of objects. which is why I have this whole chain of try catches here. So we are going to need that. Try this. Except attribute error, yeah. So we can print it. We should try to remember to go back and turn that off though. So we catch it, and then when we catch the first one, there's a couple other things to try, because some types of widgets, they just have a height by themselves, but some types of widgets, they have an underscore height, and some types have neither. What's the third way? View layout.view.y, view layout.height. That's for layouts? I'm not sure what the third one is for, actually. It's been a little while since I messed with this code. This one, though, is content again. Space content.y plus content.underscore height. So I want to say maybe shapes. Is that right? Shapes. Shapes. Okay, so this extends round rect. Round rect accepts a width and a height. What does it do with them? Creates a bitmap. Anything else? Range. X offset. Outline stuff. Nothing else. Tile grid, though, maybe has a width. Whoops, I want the docs. Yeah. Oh, this is parameters? Oh, it doesn't have. It takes a width and a height, but it doesn't have properties to access them. Interesting. That complicates things a little bit. So the thing is, in the old, what is now the inflator library, it allowed you to make shapes and add them to the linear layout and have it work as expected. The thing is, though, the reason why that was able to work is because I kind of created a widget that encompasses the circle or whatever shape and has a width and a height. And if we don't have a width and a height, we can't add it to the linear layout. It has to have a width and a height so that we know where to put the next thing. So we won't really be able to use shapes this way. So we created view. This just has helper functions. There's no width and height here. Maybe circle didn't work. Rect has a width. What was in here? Label, 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 button, image, progress bar, bitmap. No circle. Honestly, I bet circle didn't work. Anyway, though, let's keep going. Do we need the underscore width height stuff though? Which class was it that was like that? Let me just check a few more. Display button. Let's try that one. Button. And progress bar. I think that's just progress bar. Docs. Well, we don't need the docs, I guess. We want the code. Extends tile grid. Takes width and height. Does have self-doubt width. And probably height. Yeah. And properties. So this one's good. Progress bar has properties for it, which is nice. Let's look at button. Whoops. Maybe we don't actually need this code anymore. I could have swore there were some types of widgets that didn't have a width and a height. They had it was private. They had an underscore width. An underscore height. I don't remember what widgets they would have been though now. Let me just take one quick peek through the list of possible ones. Bitmap label has bounding box, which gives you the width and height. Height. So this would not work with this would not work with landscape. It would not work with a horizontal linear layout. It would need a width property. So this is another one of the problems actually. So because of the way that I made classes that wrapped all of these things, I was able to kind of like unify the APIs for all of them. Because like, as it stands today, bitmap label, it doesn't have a height and a width property. It has a bounding box, and then you have to know the right indexes to get the height and width. Whereas we just saw progress bar and button both have a width and a height that you could just access with width and height. Shapes. The rectangle does, but the circle doesn't. It's kind of like a mixed bag of stuff. And the way that I had all of them in wrapper classes before, I was able to kind of fix any of those differences inside those wrapper classes so that the layout code could be pretty much the same. What does grid layout do for labels and stuff? So button size, cell size. This should not be called button size. Probably should be cell size. Right. Resize. Resize takes both. It takes XY width height or just width height? It must be just width height. Resize takes width and height. So inside grid layout, it tries to call resize if it exists. If this content object has resize, then call resize, passing these width and height values, which match up to the grid and cell size. If it doesn't have resize, then set them independently, width and height. Did we make resize on... We did. Did we make resize on bitmap label? I think so. Bitmap label and label. So maybe it just fails to set the width and height. Probably just fails to set the width and height, I guess. Yeah, we don't have resize. We have resize inside of widget, though, I think. Yeah. And then subclasses are supposed to override it. So honestly, it would be nice if we would change label and bitmap label to extend widget. I don't know. It would be nice because then we could take all the anchored positioning logic out of label and bitmap label. Or, well, it's actually a label base now. And we would get all of that from widget. I guess the downside is, though, then anybody who wants to use a label has to have the layout library, which is not so great. Yeah. Okay, so we're not... For linear layout, we're not worried about setting width and height. We don't have to do that, so it doesn't really matter that part. X and Y, we do want to set. But that's just X and Y, which is easy. I guess we'll leave this, but I do not remember what... I don't remember what views had it, so maybe it's not actually necessary. In which case it would be good to delete it, I guess. Really the best thing would be is if all of the types of widgets would have a width and height property. That way we wouldn't have to try other things at all. Okay, let's try it like this though. I don't remember which one had this, but maybe it'll come up. If not, we can come back and take it back out. So... if it's portrait, set the Y to the previous content end, and then try to update the previous content end by adding the content's height to it. If it failed because it doesn't have height property, then try underscore height. I can't remember even more what this one was for, truthfully, so view layout.view. I think this was for ones like, this must have been for ones like round rect, or, well, this would have been ones for like label, I guess, where the height was part of my wrapper class. But we're not going to have wrapper classes, so we don't need to try that. Okay, that makes sense. Else, if it is landscape, set the X to the previous content end, set the previous content end to the width. I mean, I guess we would need to use the same code. This is not going to work, though. So this would be content.x. This would be content.x and content.width. But it's not going to work because like label and bitmap label don't have width and height. It would have to try, it would have to try bounding box. But nothing else has a bounding box. So maybe as part of this, we'll PR width and height getter properties for label and bitmap label, because they will both need them to work inside of this. Okay. This says layout group. We don't have layout group, we have self. Should we add to self? Yeah, I guess so. Self.append content. We're going to want to do remove everything from self group. We're going to want to remove everything at the beginning of this, because if we add it at the end, then we're going to end up with extra copies. Do we take care of that in grid layout? Or, so content. No. Do we want, we would not append here. We appended in, we should append here. Should append it to the group here. Self.append content. So content goes into the list and content goes into the group. And then inside of layout, we only change the position of things. And to do so, we loop over content list and we change XY coordinates of the things in it. That makes sense. And we don't, we want to add it here. We don't want to add it in layout. We just want to position in layout. So that makes sense. Okay, so this was all, no. Okay, if it was portrait, do that. If it was horizontal, do that. If it is label, right. Label because X and Y are different. on label, x and y are, well, x is the same, but y is half the vertical size. So we don't want that, and we need to have code that fixes it, which is what this code here does. I don't think we want to check for label specifically, though, because truthfully, we would want bitmap label also. We would want any, I mean, really what it is we would want pretty much anything that has anchor point. So maybe we should say, up here, which is actually convenient, we have an extra layer here of, well, that's the wrong spot, never mind. Maybe we should say here, if anchor point in content dot, how do you check if a property exists? Python check if property exists. Bustly check. Why is this thing so big? Okay. Has at her. This is checking type also. Using dir as a workaround. I think has at her is what we want. Yeah, let's look at that. Python has at her. Do we have, can we use that on CircuitPython? Hopefully. Has at her. Let's make sure actually. You know what I don't have open yet is the CircuitPy drive. Whoops. Maybe it's in recent. Yeah. Oh. I don't need that open. CircuitPy. So also TO. I don't know which one's which. Guessed right. Import board has after board display. True. Blinka, false. Okay, we can use that, and that looks like it should work. So back to here. If has after object content anchor point not, if not, then use xy. Else if it does have use anchor point in position. Okay, this is creating the label. We don't need that. This is appending it. We don't need that. This stuff we need. Okay. If it's in portrait, set the label's anchor point, content. So label is going to be inside content here. Set it to 0, 0. Bunch of print statements. We'll want to take some of those out. Set the anchor position of the label also. Is zero. I feel like we should just use 0 because the label should be at the far left of the linear layout. If you want to scoot the label over, you would scoot the whole linear layout over. Or if you want to do just a layer by itself, you would do it outside of the linear layout. You could still just adjust the X, I think. Well, this would undo it. You could do it afterwards. The thing is, though, in the old style way that this worked, you could pass a new X in your JSON code. We don't really have a spot for the user to pass that. So I think we just want to respect whatever the parent's X is. So we can set ourself to anchored position 0. We can set our... well, that's our X, and then our Y would be previous content end, just previous content end. But same thing here to do padding, add padding here. Oh, okay. So, what is this stuff? Set the previous content end, so content. And here's where we have trouble. So we're going to try to say content.height, but, well, oh. Yeah. If we were still having an if statement more like is label, then we could just code the bounding box down there. I feel like adding a height and width property onto label and bitmap label is a better solution, though, because then we don't need code like specific to label and bitmap label just for getting height and width. But we already have code specific to bitmap label and label anyway because of the anchor point stuff. I think I'd rather have properties and keep it this way. Like, if we do have an anchor point, we want to use it. But I think I still want to be able to just use height and width. So we'll have to PR label and bitmap label with that if they're not there. Maybe I'm misremembering. Maybe they are there. I don't know. But this is, so we're going to call it content after, else if it's horizontal, set the X, content.x. Well, no, we shouldn't be setting X. I mean, I guess we can, but that... we should be setting anchor point, anchor position. I mean, I guess the thing is, though, since we're stacking horizontally, the half Y thing doesn't mess with us. But I do think it's weird, though, because this says use anchor point and then this doesn't, so we still want to do that. Let's go this here. Anchor point's always 0, 0. And then here, let's say anchored position is previous content end. And zero. Basically the opposite of the logic from before. We want the y to just be whatever the layout's y is. So we don't set x. We do need to change this content and content. Probably don't need pass. Okay. I think that is a good first attempt here. We don't need any of these. We don't need JSON. It says we don't need display. Oh, is that true? I guess, yeah, because we're not making a group. Okay, let's clean this up some. And I'm going to comment this out for now, but I will delete it once we get a successful test. Because once we know it's working, then we don't really need any of this code. Why is this red? Is he going to run? Interesting. Missing closing triple quotes. I mean, I wish that Python had a multi-line comment. The way that you have to use strings like this is annoying. I don't understand why there's not a multi-line comment. I guess I can do this, right? Maybe I think the IDE will help me. But this is a pain to undo. Do like, oh no, that doesn't even work. Does it like this? No, it doesn't even work, okay. Alright, well, we'll just do it this. I don't know why it thinks it's not there. It's gonna nuke whatever the last line is. It's gonna be red. Whatever. Hopefully it will still run. Okay. Let's put this on the device and test it. Start adding some stuff to it. Show files. Too far. Dang it. Copy that. Wrong one. CircuitPy lib. Display layout. Nope, 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 nope. Did that paste? Doesn't seem like it pasted. I don't have a trash thing. Is this drive full? No? Am I viewing hidden? No. Okay. delete that. I don't know why it's didn't paste. There we go. Let's start with basically grid layout simple test. And then we're going to change it to use linear layout. So layout, linear layout. Why is this mad? I think, oh, I guess it just doesn't know about this library. That's fine. Built-in display, main group, linear layout. Keep that. We will keep that. We don't have these. We'll keep that. So this has a list of labels also. Creating a label, creating a label. I don't know why it has a list of labels too, actually. It's just creating it, appending it, and then adding it. So we just pass the content for add content. No more position. And group append the layout. Display show is already called. Okay, so if linear layout worked, we would get a vertical line of labels on the screen, but I don't think it will because we are going to need to do that width height stuff. But let's check it out. Okay, super before accessing native object. I'm gonna work on the one that's in my lib folder, and then I'll copy it back to the repo. This way I don't have to copy paste while we figure out what the problem is here. So this says line 20. Right, we can't call, we can't set super, we can't set the parent X before we initialize the parent. I think that's what the problem is. Okay, getting closer. Linear layout has no attribute, previous content end. So this is on line 68. Previous content end. So probably we just need to start that off at 0. Previous content end 0. There we go. And they are in a line. They are very far down the screen, which is interesting. Does this affect how far down the screen they are? No. Okay, so we can we leave out 0 zeros here? I don't know. Okay, what got printed here? Before 0, y before 0, setting y to 0. This is the pink hello. So why is it ending up so far down? I know we're going to need to, at least I think we're going to need to add those height and width properties, but I would have thought everything would have got stuck at the top. Maybe these have height and width properties. Nothing there. Got a bounding box. Got a property for bounding box. Self width or self height. No, none of that stuff's relevant. Okay. What's happening is we're calling add content. Add content is calling layout. Each time through layout, we're looping over all the content items, and we are setting them according to previous content end. The thing is that previous content end is still set at the bottom, because we're doing a vertical list right now, which means every time we call layout, stuff will get lower and lower and lower. So I think we could confirm that theory by, let's back this off to just one thing. So we add one label. That's going to be much closer to the top. And then if we just call layout, even though that's private, this is going to make it shift down. Yeah. So inside layout, we are relaying out every single view. We don't want to remove. Actually, I decided against that. But what we do want to do is set self.previewContentEnd back to 0 so that we start at the beginning. Okay. And now if we call layout again, it won't move. Perfect. Okay. Much better. So we could add these back. What does this look like with all of them now? Whoops. Okay. That looks like what we want. Why does that work though? Hey K-Match, how's it going? A lot of echo and reverb. I'm not sure. I do have a different microphone though, so I would not be shocked if it sounds different. One thing I still need to do is figure out the filters. I guess those are filters or effects or something like that. Inside of OBS, I need to try to find out like a way to cut the background volume, and maybe I can fix the echo also. But I don't necessarily have a great way to do it today, so unfortunately probably will just be something we got to deal with for today. I'll try to tinker with it though before next week. Same. Okay. The other thing I'll do is I can record. I'll listen back to this recording and see if I can figure out where it's coming from and try to fix it. Let's see. Why did this work? Because a label does not have a width and a height, does it? Sounds like there's 2 audio inputs active. That I could probably check on. I wonder if it's taking the one from the camera. Oh yeah, what does this say? Okay. USB condenser. Do you need that? Can you disable these? Can you guys still hear me? And if you can still hear me, does it sound any better? Bit of a delay, maybe? I don't know, you might not be able to... Okay, much better. Okay, good. Okay. Let me delete this? You know what? I'll mess with it after. I'll mess with it when I'm not on the stream. I'm glad that's better, though. Thank you. No, yeah, no, thank you for pointing it out. I'm happy to get it fixed. So, just for if anybody's interested, I had audio input capture set to the microphone that I want to use, but I think that it just has a microphone by default in OBS. Like there's no source for mic aux, it just shows up there. So I turned off audio input capture, and that got rid of the second one. Anyway, thanks for pointing that out, and thanks for confirming that we are better now. I will probably just remove audio input capture. I think I assumed that I needed that, but maybe I don't actually. Yeah, does this have a height? Let's check this. Oops, wrong side. And also we want this. And also we're printing so many things, we're never gonna be able to see that. So let's go height. Format. Blank. blank? Why would it be blank? Does it throw an exception if you access a property that doesn't exist? Does that raise an exception? It does. So label has a height property, but it's blank. But somehow it is allowing this to work. Where would that be coming from? Okay. Okay. Several questions. Why would we have a height property and have it be blank? Question 1. Where did the height property come from? Question 2. And then if height is blank, why does the linear layout work? So if height is blank, okay, so this is not has anchor point, which we do have anchor point. So we're going down here, which is where all of our prints are coming from. So let's trace this through. Let's just look at the first one. I wish I could clear this. Okay, first one says before 0. So previous content in starts on 0. That makes perfect sense. Why before is 0? The first time we run this, the label has a y value of 0. That makes sense. We're about to set the y value to 0 plus 0. That makes sense. We say setting y, we're actually setting the anchor position, but so then we call anchor position is equal to 0 for x, and then previous content end for y, and we didn't mess with any padding. And then we say, okay, here's what's happening. So we set the anchored position, and then we access the y must be updating itself. When we set the anchored position, y is changing. The way this code was written, it's not really intending for it to work like that. This was actually meant to be... So actually, this was meant to be the padding, I think. And in the case of label, it's causing it to work because anchored position is changing y, which means after is ending up at 28, which happens to be whatever the y value is once we get to this anchored position. So I think this is not how we want this to work, though. This should be padding, which we don't currently account for. And then this should be height. And if we run it this way, it's not going to work. It's going to stack all the labels on top of each other. Although some of them did still move. This can't have a height in here, right? Should be blank. Content height. That's weird. So we got before, we got Y before, we got setting Y2, and then we got after. Why do we not get content height? Missing format. Thank you. Yep. Yep. Did I mess that up somewhere else too? Who's that? Neradoc. Thank you, Neradoc. I appreciate that. Yeah, I did. I messed it up right here as well. Which is why height is blank. So maybe height is not blank. All right, let's fix that. Let's fix this one. Ooh, that saved everything. Right. Sorry, I just bunked the microphone. Hopefully that wasn't too loud. Okay. Okay, yeah, no, it is blank. It's actually printing now, and it is blank. I wonder why the one from CodePy doesn't matter. Is it still running? No. This somehow ends up with a height. Okay, before is 0, y before is 0, setting y to 0, content height is 14. But we decided label does have a height. So if I just create a label and do nothing inside linear layout for now, I don't even need while true. Do I? I don't think so. If I just create a label and say, what's the height of my label? 14. So that does work. Label does have height. Where does it come from, though? Because I just looked at the code. Didn't I? Okay, this is bitmap label. Let's look at label. I mean, I think they're the same with regards to this, but self dot, it does. Self.width is max glyphs. Shouldn't it be max glyphs times the width of each glyph? And this says height is the bounding box of the font. So are these are different? Self.width, yes. Height, we don't have those. So if this were a bitmap label, it would not do the same thing. You know what? Actually, let's do it this way. Okay, has no attribute height. All right, now the world makes sense again. So label has a height and a width, but it doesn't have properties for them. They're not underscore, so they're not necessarily private, but they don't have like actual properties either, so they're not quite public, I would say, necessarily either. And I'm not sure that they get set to the right things. Doesn't seem like width does. And also height, I think, would be wrong if your label had a new line in it, would it not? Because this is only accounting for the font's bounding box, not the text. So if that was hello world, if this was back to label, yeah, that still has a height of 14, even though now it should be double because it has a new line in it. So label has a height and width, but they don't actually do what this code assumes they do. Boy, that makes it a little bit tough because, so we could make properties. Why not use F strings? It's a good question. I only learned about F strings more recently, and I just don't. I don't know. They're not very ingrained into my head and my fingers and stuff. I want to say. I ran into trouble using F strings. Test. Except I never called the code that uses this. Oh, buddy. Scared me, dude. Catex, maybe? You want to get up here? Whoop. Catty beans. Okay. That's probably good. Yeah, they're nice. When I think about it, they are nice because it takes up less room. I do like it. I'm almost positive that I had some kind of situation come up though where they didn't work as well. Like maybe what I'm testing here is if it's inside the library, does it work? Label's not defined. Label's not defined. What? What? What am I doing wrong here? I don't want to undo everything. Isn't that what I had? I don't know. I must have had something else different still. I don't know. Let's put that back here. Test. Now that's working. Only other thing I could think is maybe it came from MPY. I don't know. Maybe it works. Maybe it works totally fine. I can't remember where. I feel like I ran into a place somewhere where it didn't work. And then beyond that, it's just because it's new to me and I don't remember about it by default. F-strings aren't supported on all builds. Okay. Especially the really small. Okay, that must be what it was. Maybe I was on an M0 device. Yeah. They're nice. I do like them. I'm getting into the habit. I've been writing a fair amount of JavaScript lately. Playing with the game, the tile map game stuff has got me kind of reinvigorated into looking at Phaser. It's a JavaScript library for making games. And I've been playing with that. In JavaScript, they have, well, they don't have print. They have console.log. And they have one like this. You can go tick marks and then something and then these things and like my var here. So I will say I've gotten used to using those now in JavaScript, and that's like, you know, pretty similar obviously to F-strings, so that'll probably help me come around to using them more in Python. If you don't need formatting, comma is simpler than takes table stuff. Is that a comma? What does that mean? You use a comma instead of use a comma instead of these? No, that's going to be a literal. Maybe it means out here. Well, and a comma too. But you can do that without the F, can't you? Yeah. If you just print. Yeah. Oh, okay. Yeah, you took the F off there. I see. I gotcha. Okay. So let's delete this before we forget. Where are we at here? So we either need to use the bounding box or we need to make height and width properties on label and bitmap label that do what we expect. The downside is because label is already setting self-dot width and height, there's no telling what code might be trying to use it. Let's take a quick search through here. See how many times this gets used. box width. Why would the number of lines go into the box width? Wouldn't the number of lines affect the box height? And the end line spacing also. Line spacing should be a height thing, shouldn't it? Not a width thing? So width gets used twice. Does height get used more than that? 4 times. So if we were to try to add properties to label and bitmap label, we would need to change everywhere that uses self.height and self.width inside label specifically to have different names. Like, it seems like those are glyph height and glyph width, potentially. So maybe we could rename them to that, and then we'd be able to use the names height and width. But then we're changing the API for label. Hey Hugo, how's it going? Good morning. What's the parent's if condition? I'm not sure where I was at when you said that. Yeah, I don't know for sure where I was at. Sorry. Should have been keeping a closer eye on the chat there. This one says if character, but yeah, I don't even know which function we were in, unfortunately. Doing pretty good. Yeah, pretty good. Going couple hours here. I'll be going to get my first shot of the vaccine, so that's really cool news. That's why we're an hour early today. Just working on some display layout stuff here. So I'm kind of hesitant. So I was kind of planning on just adding a height and width to label and bitmap label because I was under the impression that they didn't have that neither bitmap label or label had height and width currently, but it turns out that is not the case. Label does have height and width, and it does different things than what I would have expected, and I don't know as though I want to go through changing everywhere where they are used. 1 second here. Let me check what this person's saying. Okay. So maybe we'll just check for bounding. Like for now, let's just check for bounding box and use bounding box if it exists. That will allow us to work around the problem as well. So whenever we access width or height, instead of doing height or width, if has attr content bounding box. If not, let's go not first. If not, do this stuff. Else, do this. Can get rid of this print, I think. We'll get rid of the other one as well when we're done, but I'm going to leave it for now. And this won't be height, but instead bounding box XY width height. 0, 1, 2, 3 for height. basically same code over here. Oh, let me see the chat here. RTL and LTR. Could width have been using the line count? Oh, yeah, that's a good theory. Yeah, that's probably what it is, honestly. Because in that case, if it's going vertically, it needs to know the line height. And then width and height get kind of flopped. If not the language, maybe display orientation. Yeah. Orientation. I think you're probably on the nail with orientation. That's probably what those are for. So if it doesn't have bounding box, use width. Else, if it does, then use bounding box. Bounding box. XY width to height. One second. Sorry. There we go. There we go. So that's probably, that should work better. And these were for padding. So this is actually, these should be zeros as well, because those are gonna get used for padding eventually once we have it. Okay, so now the thing is that I took out my while true. So let's put that back. Let's check it with one thing and see what happens. Main group, we need to add to main group the layout. Why don't we just do that right after we create it? Okay, one label is looking good. So let's add a second one. And then if the second one looks good, then we'll just go ahead and bring in all four. We don't really need height. Do we need height? What is it printing? Should be printing. Oh, you know what? Let's do this actually. Oh, no, we can't do that. Yeah, we can't do that. I was gonna say, let's check and make sure we're getting 14. And then I was also gonna say, let's check and make sure we're getting 28 if we use a new line in it, but we don't have a way of checking that value. I mean, we could check bounding box, I guess, but relatively confident bounding box works. And the code that's inside of here doesn't make like a property or anything available that we can just look up for testing. Make sure I test with labels with characters that have, yeah, that's a good point as well, G and stuff like that to make sure. I'll need to test with, what's the name of that property? I don't know, whatever the name of the property is that affects it. It's like tight, background tight. I think it's background tight. I'll need to check with that as well. Thank you for the reminder, Hugo. Okay, so we're gonna put the second one. Got it. Save it. Not so good. So the problem is that bounding box doesn't take into account scale. Does it? If this was scale 1, it would work? Yeah. So I am maybe back around to thinking it would be really nice if we did have width and height properties on label and bitmap label, and we could have them do this multiplication for us, content.scale. That way you get one value and it's already scaled to the right size. Scale. There we go. That is looking better. Okay, let's add the other two so that we go back up to 4. Ooh, not so good on the other ones. But why? It's almost like previous content location didn't get updated. Okay, we'll step through the logic. Well, you know what? Why don't we... I don't know why 2 worked fine. Let's just add the 3rd and see where that gets us. Okay, so maybe the deal is because background is none. If we just add a background color, does it work? No. Okay, that's actually a good thing. Because if that would have worked, I don't really know what we would have done to fix the rest of it. Okay, I got to run real quick to the restroom. I will be right back. Let me set this to this one, and I'll be right back. Whoops. Okay. We're back. The third one breaks it. Why would the third one break it? Let's look at what we're getting printed here. Let's turn off height. So, nope, this still has height. This still has height. This still has height. There we go. Okay, so before, let's pull up the code here. Okay, so for the first one, previous content in is 0. Y before we change anything is 0. We're setting Y to 0. This would make us print the wrong thing right now, because that's also from the padding. But that's only affecting what gets printed, so that would not change the behavior. Set the anchored position to the previous content end. Let's move this down here so that we print after, so that we can see what it got set to. Okay, 4 is 0, Y is 0, setting Y to 0. After is 28. So prev content end did get moved. Next one, before is back to 0, but that's because we call layout again whenever we called add content. Layout set it back to 0. So I think that makes sense. I think though what we want is, we want to break this up some. Let's get a little divider here. Because basically each time we call add content, we got to relay out, well, we don't have to, I guess, necessarily, but the way the code is written now, we are relaying out everything that's in the linear layout. So before, Y before, setting Y after. No, this is not the right run. There we go. So that's when we added the first label. Here's where we added the second label. So we do have a difference here. We said before was previous content. Y before is content.y. But we're going to set with anchored position. And I don't think we care what it was before, do we? This is still kind of harkening back to the way that this was using... I probably shouldn't have done it this way, truthfully. In in the inflator library, it was using X and Y implicitly as padding or margin, depending on how you think about it. Only when you use linear layout, though. So, like, if you were using absolute layout, which is kind of the regular one, just XY positioning, then X and Y are the position, just like normal. But if you're using linear layout, then X and Y were like adding extra little margin to it. So I use the same properties, and I really should have added, like, I should have called it padding. But I didn't, so that's why some of the code is like that. So I think, though, we don't really care about Y before. It's interesting that it's different, but it makes sense because we changed the anchored position last time. But I don't think we care. So setting Y to 0 makes sense. This is the first one again. So then after is 28, which makes sense. So then that's all the same except for Y before, which I don't think we care about again, and I just turned off. Here, the next one we start with, we're at before 28. That makes sense. Y before is 0. Don't care about that. Setting Y to 28. After is 28. Yes. I got a little bit hasty. Deleting things related to padding. This needs to be not 0. This needs to be... So it said Y before, content.y. That's not what we want, though, because... Well, it's not guaranteed to be what we want. It might be what we want in some cases. Honestly, though, I think previous end, I think we should just use the old value. Take the old value and then add the height of the new content item to it. That way it'll work for label the same as it works for anything else, because Y position doesn't matter. Yeah, that's much better. Okay, so now let's add the fourth. Okay, looking good. Let's make sure that new lines do work. Let me change up some of these. Okay. That looks good. I don't know if we actually have enough room, but let's try horizontal. Should have maybe, well, now's the time to change it, right? This should be called, I think we should use vertical horizontal instead of portrait and landscape. We don't actually have the word landscape because it's a Boolean. You just set it to false. Yeah. I think vertical is better. Vertical orientation. Let's do it that way. Okay. So I think we actually have the same problem, which is that we were using 0 and we need to be using previous location on the x values though. Yeah. Or use rotation, like in the graphics library. I'm not sure which graphics library. Yeah, we could have an enum where it has like vertical, horizontal as words. You set them. That might be nicer. I ended up going with Boolean when I made it just because there's only 2 states, and I figured Boolean made the most sense. Well, that's not true, actually. I figured I sacrificed a little bit of making sense for having a smaller type of variable, which I guess is probably not a very good trade-off. It might be better to just use strings or enums or constants or something. So that way you would like, it would be explicit. You would be like, you know, give me the horizontal orientation, and you have to use those words when you set it instead of putting vertical orientation false. That's probably better, honestly, because it makes the code like easier to understand. I never used an enum before though. Can I just do constants? Do they have, no, what is that called in Python? Do we have constants? Try to find the right library. It's the one used by MagTag Portal Base. Display shapes, possibly, or that's my guess, is display shapes. Although I don't know if they have, I'm not sure if there's a rotation on display shapes. Enums are not natively supported. Okay, so we won't be able to do enum. Is there a, I want to say we have it MPY constant or something, like micro, is there a MicroPython constant? MicroPython constant. Const. I don't know if we can use this. Seems that it consumes memory. Foo equals constant 1. Defines foo to be a constant with value 1, that is all. Okay, do we have that? And is it a good idea to use it if we do? REPL const, no, let's go vertical goals const 1. We do, okay. And it won't let me change it, right? Ooh. Ooh. You can change it. I mean, it doesn't really matter, I guess, for our usage. But it does seem odd. I don't really know what a lot of this means, honestly. Okay. It doesn't seem like it's doing anything, so I don't think we necessarily need to use it. Let's just use numbers. What do we got? We got a loop, link here. This is progress bar. Graphics. Rotation. Oh, I see what you're saying. Okay, so yeah, graphics here, it's inside Portal Base, I think, actually. Yeah, graphics is just helper class. Let's look at this. Okay, just variables. Pretty much regular variables. Okay, let's do that. So let's go. I will do orientation. Doesn't really matter what number we give them. As long as it's different. Then we can do orientation, default vertical. Now the problem is all of our code is written the other way. So ooh. Why can't I use that? Works that way. Second is implementation of enums. If you make two the same, it adds entertainment. Yeah, that would be tough. Yeah. That would be no good. Okay, if orientation is vertical, do this stuff. Let's find any others. Basically just swap those over. Other ones are commented out. Okay. Valid syntax. Got a random space in there. Let me close this. And let's get back to here. Okay. Unexpected keyword, right. We're going to need to change the code that uses it. Orientation. And I want... we want static. How do we make these static? Can you do that? Static. This is how we want to do it. That's just inside of CSS student, which is what we have here. I guess maybe this will work. Yeah. Okay. Just doesn't know. Okay. Perfect. So it would mess it up. I guess one thing we should do is if you pass the wrong number, it defaults to horizontal. We should catch that. Can't do in because it's not a list. Should this be attribute? No, it's not an attribute. Value error? Pass the wrong kind of value? A runtime error? I think value error makes sense. Must be either darn it. There we go. Value error. Oh, gotta reboot again. Value error. Make sure I spelled it right. Orientation must be either linear layout, vertical orientation, or horizontal orientation. Okay. So that's good now. It won't let us pass in a bogus value. Gonna go back to vertical. I think vertical is the most likely way folks will do it. Yeah, I could add them to a list. That's probably nicer. I didn't think about making a list in line right there. And it'll cry about these extra parentheses probably. There we go. Thank you. Who's that? Hugo probably? I think that's probably Hugo. I don't see a name on there. Let me scroll up. Yeah, Hugo. Thanks, Hugo. What's next? Padding. Talked about adding padding. Let's go ahead and do that. Could I give a 10-second recap? Yeah, sure. Give me 1 second here. Let me check on this. On the way. Okay. So I am specifically working on a. Also, how's it going, TG Techie? Thanks for tuning in. It's nice to see you. Nice to see you tuning in. I know you do all kinds of neat stuff with Display.io. We usually focus on Display.io, so this is right up your alley, I bet. The specific thing I'm looking at is inside of Display.io layout library. We have this library called Display.io layout, and where did it go? Got too many things open now. Here we go. So we had a grid layout inside there, and it was useful for, do we have a picture of it somewhere? I don't know if there's a picture, maybe in the PR. Eventually we want to make a learn guide, which would be the great spot to have pictures of a lot of this stuff. But we had grid layout, and it's useful for laying out different things into a grid. So like, 1, 2, 3, 4. If you want to have a 2x2 grid, you can do that, or a 3x3, or whatever you want. And so it allows you to create your grid layout and then add content on any type of display IO object that you want. So this example is using labels, but it could be other things as well. It can be buttons, it can be progress bars, it can be basically any of the types of widgets that we have created. Probably even I think you made a slider or something like that. Probably that would work in there as well. If it has a width and a height property, it should work. So you add your things to the grid layout, and then it does all the hard work of actually figuring out the coordinates of where stuff need to go, so that you don't have to mess with it. So you can make like a nice clean looking layout that puts stuff into a grid without micromanaging the pixel XY of everything. So this one already exists. And I had created a similar thing in the past. I had created one that was a linear layout. So instead of going in a grid, like 2 by 2 or something, it's always, X by 1, right? It's, 3 by 1, or it's 4 by 1, or it's 1 by 4. It can go the other way. So it can be either vertical or horizontal, but it's always, by 1, right? It's either one column or one row only. And the idea is that the API should work the same. So you create, let's go back to the sample code. You should be able to create the layout, CodePy, shrink. You should be able to create the layout up here and then create your content objects, which I sometimes call views, but content objects. So in this case, again, we're using labels, and then add content to those on the layout. And then the layout will take care of stacking them up either vertically or horizontally for you. So it's just a kind of a higher level widget that you can put other widgets into, and it will take care of the positioning. So it will lay them out into a line, either horizontal or vertical. And so I had made this thing in the past, and I made it inside of this other library that I created called... it actually had layout in the name. I ended up changing it. So right now it's called Display.io Inflator. And the main thing that this library was good for is it consumes JSON. You can keep your layouts in a JSON description like this, where it like kind of describes all the different things you want to put onto the screen. And then this thing would go and take your JSON and inflate it into those objects, and then allow you to put it into a group or on the screen, however you want to do that. So I created linear layout back when I was working on this inflator library. And so what I'm doing today is basically taking it from its old state, which is back here, where it's like really tightly coupled with the idea of that JSON inflating. I'm taking it from there, and I ripped out all of that inflating stuff and made the API match the grid layout. And then in a little bit here, once everything is working, we'll go and make a PR on Display.io layout to add linear layout to it so other folks can start using it. So that's what we're working on today. If there's anything else that you're curious about, let me know. I can dive in deeper on anything, but I think that's a good high level. Let's see. Ultimately, there's a million different ways to do it, as long as it conveys the message and it's relatively consistent on a per library basis. Yeah. Worry more about what you want to display as opposed to exactly where you... Yeah, that's exactly right, Hugo. That's a good way to put it. Make it consistent, yeah. Basically, the core idea is just make it easier for folks to make layouts that look good, right? Like, making a UI is not hard, but it's tedious, especially if you're just using XY coordinates on stuff. So this kind of does some of that lifting for you, so hopefully it makes it slightly less tedious. Okay, I think we're looking pretty good here. So those are lined up. Do we need anything else? We will need doc strings, but that's not functionality wise. Oh, padding, that's what we're gonna do. Padding, how do we want the padding to work? Should you just set the padding at the parent? So like set padding on linear layout and then all the content items receive the same padding? Or should we allow you to set padding per content item? That's more complex, and then we gotta store like a mapping or a list or something. Let's start simple and just do the main padding for the parent. And it'll be the same on every content item for now. If folks really want to use different paddings, maybe we can add that as a feature in the future. Or the other thing you could do is like add a spacer, like make a black rectangle or something that matches your background and put that in there. That's probably not a very good solution, but yeah. Maybe we'll make it so you can, well, no, we would need to keep that list still. Yeah, let's work with this way first. Padding equals 0 by default. Self.padding, padding. Nothing in add content. We do have something here though. Yeah. Plus self.padding. And I'll be wrapping up here pretty soon. Probably like 15-20 minutes or so I'll be wrapping up for the day. Again, I got a appointment this afternoon to go get my first shot for the vaccination, so I'll be heading to there right when I get off of the stream here. Content-wise, so we added padding. We need to also so I think we want to do that this way. This is kind of the same thing that was going on elsewhere, which was we were using Y before because Y unfortunately kind of was the padding in the original version of this, which was not a good design choice, but it was one I made nonetheless. So we can go previous plus the height plus the padding. And this says put the object at previous plus padding. Oh, we don't want to add that in both spots though. Yeah, no, if we're gonna add padding into previous, then we don't want to add padding into Y because it will already be there. We're also only going to allow padding between items. There will not be extra padding at the top. So place it at previous, and then update previous to be whatever it used to be plus the height plus the padding. So then next time around, we're going to place the next item at previous, which will already have the padding built in. Yep, that sounds right. So same thing here. Let's go previous. Content. Oh, this is the underscore height. I don't know for sure if this is needed. We might cut this back out. I'm not going to do it right now, but I never did find out what the thing that used that was. Oh, let me catch up on the chat. Missed a couple. Let me see here. This library is reminiscent of WPF and XAML. Yeah, it is a lot like Android does. Hugo mentions it's, and that's my background, so that is essentially what I tried to do. In Android, you build your layouts with XML files. In CircuitPython, we don't have an XML parser yet, so I did JSON instead, but like I was trying to make that experience of building a layout basically work the same way that I'm used to from Android, which is you build your layout in that other file and then you just kind of tell it to render for you. Tedious, yep, Dexter Starboard brings up a good point. One of the things that's really tedious about making layouts is if you change screen sizes, then stuff all gets moved around. So TG Techie's questions and thoughts. Will it allow a widget to span multiple rows or columns? Yeah, in the grid layout it does. It does. You can set, when you do add content, you can pass in a cell size right here. Let me pull up the example for this one. Grid layout, simple test. I don't think the simple test makes use of it. Yeah, these are all 1x1s in the simple test, but you can pass a different size here. So if your whole grid is 3x3 and you want a certain cell to be 2x2, you can make those values 2x2. Or if you want to go 1x2 or 2x1, all of that stuff should work in the grid layout. Can certainly understand wanting to make the UI designers' lives easier. Yeah, for sure. You're welcome. I find it. I think it's just a neat thing to work on, and it's something that I like to use in my projects. So I'm happy if other folks like it too, for sure. Johnny's back. Had a work call. Oh, bummer. Work call's on the weekend. That's no fun. I've been there before though. Realized and screwed up. Had to work on it for a while. Yep, that's a bummer. Thanks for coming back though, Johnny. Nice to see you back. UI implementers. Yep. Developer. Yeah, I would agree with what Johnny said. I'm a developer, not a designer. I've gotten better though. Like in my day job, I'm now one of 2 programmers. We've had a team that got as big as like 3 or 4, but I've always been on a very small team, and I spent a bunch of time as the only developer. And so I kind of took on develop and design, and I've gotten better at design, but I'm still not good at it by any means. Programmer friendly UI. It's friendly to the programmer who wrote it. Nice. Johnny's working on developer-friendly UI framework for work, and by implementing, we mean telling people what we want. I mean, that's part of it. Somebody's got to plan it out. Plugin for GUI sections. Why not use something? I think Hugo's probably talking to Johnny. It's controlled from the API. Oh, that's a sweet looking, let me throw that up here. That's a sweet looking, the progress bars there. Dexter, I like the icons you threw on there too. I don't know if that's a Learn Guide project or if you made that. If you made that, consider posting that up in the show and tell room if you want. And if it hasn't been in there already, you could submit it for the newsletter. I'm sure they'd be happy to have that kind of thing. That looks really clean though. I do like the way that looks. So that kind of vertical stack in the middle there, that's where you could use linear layout potentially, right? Like you stick your labels. So it looks like maybe, I don't know if you have one label here with a new line, or maybe it's two separate labels. Either way, it should work in linear layout. Then you've got a label there, then a progress bar, and then another layer, then another label, and then another progress bar. So that's the kind of thing you probably have in your code, like XY coordinates and stuff for all those different things. And that's the exact kind of layout where linear would help. Oh, there is a Learn Guide already. Thank you, Nerdoc. Learn Guide. It's just not on the mag tag. Sweet. That looks awesome, though. Okay. Where were we at here? Grid. So I caught up. Did I catch all the way up on the chat? Yeah. And I'm going to be taking off in just a few minutes. Let's see if we can wrap this, though. So we were working on padding. Okay. We added the padding there. So we updated this one. We want to add the padding here, too. Self.padding. Okay. Same thing on X. But also we do this also. We don't want X, we want previous. Content width now plus padding. Okay. Anchor point ones. Add padding here. Oh, no. Don't get tricked though, because we said we don't want to add it there. We want to add it here when we set previous. So previous equals old value plus height plus padding. padding. Now, print, that's fine for now. We don't want to, yeah, we don't want to add it here. We do want to add it here, but we also want to update, oops. We also want to update this to previous. Previous, and then width, and then padding. Temperature and humidity, that's a nice looking temperature gauge too. Or temperature screen, I mean. Question about layouts. Can layout element contain another layout? That's a good question, Hugo. Off the top of my head, I want to say yes, but I'm not 100% sure. I think that the answer originally was no, and I think at one point I made it possible. What I don't know, though, is if that would have carried over into the work that I've done here. So that might be in my old inflator ones. I'm not sure if it does still. I definitely would like for it to work that way, though. Yeah, I want it so that you can nest linear layouts. I would not recommend nesting them, especially not very deep. If you find yourself nesting linear layouts, most likely you should be looking into a grid layout, but there are a few cases where linears might be easier if you just have one or two. So I don't know for sure if it works today, but I would like to make it work if it doesn't. Looking forward to the new libraries being done. Yeah, horizontal could have a vertical one in the center column. Yes, I would like for it to be able to work that way, but I'm not 100% sure if it does. What are you changing from your developer experience at work compared to this framework? I'm not sure if that question is to me, TG Techie. I'm not 100% sure. So my layout experience at work is all Android stuff. So I would say the main thing is like the layout stuff we have in CircuitPython. There's way fewer things you can do today. Like Android's very robust. It has padding and margin built into any type of view you want. It has a bunch of different layouts. Like there is a linear layout, there is an absolute layout, there is a grid type layout. There is also what's called a relative layout, which is really nice because you can place stuff relative to the screen or relative to other views. Like if you want to, it's really easy to say like, put a view here and then put another view below it, and then put another view to the side of it, for instance. It does all that for you without counting pixels. So I would love to get all of that stuff in Android, in CircuitPython, but we have definitely a long ways to go. Okay. Hopefully that answers what you're thinking about. But I'd say the main differences are like, it's just not nearly as comprehensive. The main things I'm trying to improve upon, I don't know if there is a whole lot I'm trying to improve upon necessarily. If we could get to the point where we had all the same functionalities as Android does, I think we'd be in a really good spot. As far as improving upon it, probably the only thing we could do to make it better is try to make it less complex, which is a bit of a double-edged sword with, like, it's got to be a certain amount of complex in order to have all of those options. So finding the happy medium of really powerful and able to do lots of things but not be super complex, that would be an improvement, but I don't know, it might not be necessarily feasible to hit. When would one not want relative positioning? X and Y is easier sometimes. Well, I don't know. Yeah, I guess if you had the option to do relative to the screen and relative to the other views, I would always use it pretty much. Yeah, I'm used to always using relative layout in Android, so I would probably use it all the time. I can see though, like some folks might not want to mess with it. Like some folks might find it easier to just say, here's my XY position, don't mess with it beyond that. Whereas relative layout, it's really like, what thing do you want it to be relative to? Is it relative to the screen, or is it relative to another view? I could see a person, if they're really new and if they've never used anything like that before, just being like, no, I don't want it relative to anything. I just want to put it on the screen, and I want to put it where I want to put it. Stop making me choose all this other stuff. I could see somebody getting frustrated by that. Hey, Jose, how's it going? Yeah, I did start early today. I started an hour early. I'm going to be ending an hour early as well. I'm going to be wrapping up here in just a few minutes, actually. But it is nice to see you. Nice to see you. Thank you for joining us here. Okay. This added padding here. So will the padding just work now? Got all that stuff still. I think the padding might just work now. So it defaults to 0. So if I just save this, everything's going to look the same. Well, oh, bummer. Oh, that is a bummer. We were working in the wrong place. Oh, yeah, shouldn't have done that there. I've been editing it in here so that I didn't have to copy it back and forth. Gosh, yeah, now I got 2 different versions. Gonna have to redo all of this. Okay, so we did not add it here. We fixed this. We added it at the end, plus self padding. Did not even add the thing here. Man, why did I do that? Padding 0. Can't just easily copy paste either, because I already changed a bunch of this file to make it work. Self.padding, padding. Okay. Padding there, previous here. Nope. Self.padding. Gonna put parentheses. Order of operations would make it work anyway, but I think it's more clear with parentheses. It's too long now. Okay. We decided not here, but here. This and parentheses, one more. There we go. Okay, that is back to working correctly. And so then if we put some padding on the layout, let's just try a couple pixels to start with. Hopefully that's big enough to see. Yeah, that worked. So hello world is one label, so there's no padding in between there. That makes sense. But there is padding below the world before line. And then there is padding below line before the other hello, and then below hello, and before Blinka. So that's looking good, and if we make it bigger, then stuff should get spread apart farther. Yep. And then let's just make sure it works with horizontal also. Oh yeah. I should install the library with pip horizontal. That way the code completion would be here. Yeah. Got all those paddings in there still. Okay. So that's looking good. before I forget, let me take this from the device, go back to the repo. Let's delete all this stuff at the bottom. And I'll run pre-commit. It's probably going to fail, and I'm not necessarily going to take the time to fix it right now. But let's just see what we're working with. Pre-commit run all files. Okay. Oof. Oh yeah, we don't have a doc string. Too many arguments, we probably will just have to ignore. What? Save memory content. Too many arguments. These lines are wrong now. Did I just mess that up by doing save memory? Okay, too many arguments. Variable E should be error, I guess. Height, there's nothing we can do about that. We might be able to just take it out completely, because I never did figure out which thing had it. So maybe we take it out completely. Variable E didn't use index, so we could just say for content in list, we don't need to enumerate an index. Too many branches. Probably have to ignore that one. Pre-commit makes changes to the file. Oh, it ran black, which changed the file. How come it didn't do that the second time, though, I wonder? Too many arguments. Yeah, we could change them to tuples, I guess. I don't know if we're going to get below the threshold still, and I would like to keep them consistent with grid layout, so if we change that in linear layout, I'd probably change them here too. I don't know. Personally, I kind of prefer them separate, but it's a bit of a preference thing. Yeah, consistency. Definitely consistency is key. I mean, the good news is we're still early. Like, if we decide to go with tuples, even though we did singles before, there's only two things to change pretty much. So, although any code that's using grid layout would have to change, which would be a bummer, I guess. That would be, well, I think the only like full Learn Guide project is the Stream Deck. Something to think about for sure. Okay, so this ran, it's not passing Pylint all the way, so I'm gonna have to do some cleanup there, but it's working correctly, I'm pretty sure, and it's brought in to this library now, and it has the same API as grid layout. So those are the main things I wanted to accomplish. I'm gonna go ahead and push, that way it gets saved in GitHub somewhere instead of just on my computer. Hey, no fighting. Don't. Even though pre-commit's not passing, so my actions are going to fail when I push it, but that's all right. I'm going to go ahead and push it anyway to back it up. Could have two inits. one with singles for compatibility. Then we could take it out eventually. I don't know. I feel like that's just kicking it down the road a little bit, though, because we would eventually want to come back and take it out, I think. Do we? Maybe we could just have two. I don't know. It's almost more confusing to have two, because then folks will wonder if there's a difference. I don't know. Maybe it's not so bad. Singles is a custom type. No, I just mean a single variable, like with just, you know, x as its own parameter and then y as its own parameter, instead of like a tuple here with so it would be like this x and y inside, and then it would be like location or something like that. This is this would be the tuple way, and then the single way is how it was before. Yeah, no, I like the idea. I like the idea, Hugo. Thank you for tossing them out. Definitely. Got a vote for tuples. Got a strong vote for tuples. I'm going to be wrapping it up right now, though, so I'm not going to make that change right now, but I would say you have convinced me. I will go ahead and switch them to tuples. One thing, actually, I guess that we have it as kind of a saving grace a little bit is that icon animated and icon widget, well, all of these widgets are all going to be moving out of this library into their own libraries, which means that the Stream Deck code is going to have to change anyway. The Stream Deck code is going to have to change to import icon widget from a new place. So maybe that's the perfect time to make the change, is like whenever we are ready to pull the trigger on removing these out of this library, somebody, probably me or JP, will be editing that Stream Deck code anyway. So maybe at the same time we just go ahead and swap grid layout to use tuples, and then we update it in the Stream Deck also. And then hopefully there's not that much widespread use of grid layout beyond that. I know Kattni used it in a project. I don't know of anybody else that has. I'm sure, you know, there's probably folks I don't know about perhaps, but those are the only ones I have in mind. So yeah, we'll switch that out a little while later. For now, I'm just going to push. Let's go commit. Adding linear layout. Commit and push. Speaking of the Stream Deck, it's got my get commands on it, so yeah, I have a bunch of unpushed commits just because I don't keep my my main branch up to date. This is on origin. That's what we want. Push. Layout. There we go. Okay, so it'll pass. I mean, it won't pass actions. It will fail. I don't know where to find the. Oh, well, I'm not on my own. That's why. Can go here. It will fail. I'll have to come back and clean it up. And then I will change them to tuples, but I will wait until we're ready to do the other changes. That way we only have to change the Stream Deck code once. Caps lock does it. Yep. Caps lock does it. All right. Anything else for today? If it looks like there's maybe a few folks on Twitch. If you're on Twitch, I'm going to try to go raid somebody. I'm trying to get more into the Twitch culture, and folks tend to do that when they're finished streaming. So if you're on YouTube, then it won't follow along, obviously, because this is a Twitch thing. But yeah, so that's going to be it for me today. Thank you for watching, all of you that did. I will be back next week at the normal time. My normal time is 10 a.m. Central on Saturday, so it's basically 1 hour later than what I did today. Today I did 9 a.m. Central to about noon is about what time it is now, so about 3 hours. That's usually roughly how long I go. And I did 9 to 12 today, but my normal time is 10 to 1, so that's what I'll be doing next week. Yeah. So thank you again for tuning in. Thank you for all the folks that dropped good ideas in the chat or helped me figure stuff out. I really appreciate all of that stuff. And I appreciate all of you hanging out. And let me see if I can figure out how to do this. I could show you. So I've never actually done this before, so I'm not sure how this works. Rate a channel. Let's go with Tim. There's only a few folks here. That's fine. Tim's pretty cool. So if you are watching on Twitch, then this will jump you over to watch Tim Baudet. This person made a egg racing game, a game where you race cars and you have an egg on top of it and you have to keep the egg in the basket. So it's kind of a cool game. If you're interested in that sort of thing, check it out. You can watch his stream. He shows a lot of stuff about how to make the game and about the business aspect of it. So if you're interested in game development, that might be something that interests you as well. So that's where we're going to go. I think I'm supposed to warn you maybe that it could be adult content. He doesn't really do anything risque. He's going to be working on his game or working on marketing or something. But if you're not okay with, potential adult content like swear words and stuff, then definitely head out now. And everybody else, I'll see you next week. So we're going to go here. We're going to go start raid. Maybe that will work. 1 viewer. Yeah. So it will count down. 2 viewers. Raid now. And does that just go? I'm not sure. New. Yeah, that's the game. I don't know if you guys can still hear me, but if so, that is the game. Thank you, Hugo, for putting that link in there. Okay. So now I think we want to go stop stream here.